Hi, and welcome to my classroom. The name of this project is Creativity and Innovation in Childcare. The purpose of this is to prove that creativity and innovation are critically important in the field of education by using creativity to solve the issue of a high staff turnover rate in childcare. Have you been marked safe from staff turnover today? Let's go somewhere a little bit more quiet and go into this in detail. Perry Mandel didn't fit the childcare mold. In fact, he was actually a real estate developer. However, he changed the face of childcare in the States. In 1969, after realizing that more women were entering the workforce, he saw that the need for childcare was growing. The company that he started is now the largest childcare organization in the United States, and according to a 2016 interview with the current CEO, Tom Wyatt, the company boasts 2,000 locations, 32,000 employees, and are responsible for over 170,000 children every day. Try to imagine the state's childcare system without corporate childcare. Where do those 170,000 children just from this organization, not counting other corporate centers, spend their day? Thanks to the creativity and innovation of a real estate developer in 1969, thousands of families have reliable childcare today. This ties in to my personal theory on creativity and innovation that it will not occur by happenstance. Rather, they must be fostered by the individual, the community, and the world for the continued and sustainable success of mankind. Staff turnover has an obvious negative effect on a center, the children and the families, because it creates so much inconsistency. Staff come to distrust each other. Families don't feel a connection to teachers because they keep changing. Children do not get their emotional needs met by a consistent adult, and that needs to be fixed. To make it clear at the very beginning, my solution is twofold. For one, childcare staff need to be better compensated. Secondly, for reasons that I will lay out later, childcare staff should be a unionized group. Before I get into solutions, let's understand the economic and demographics behind childcare first. According to Cashin, Potter, and Stetner, 95% of childcare workers are women. To break this down further, 40% are diverse individuals, being 20% Hispanic, 14% African American, and 4% Asian. This level of diversity is unparalleled in other professions, as African American women represent only 6% of the total adult workforce, and Hispanic women account for 7%. Understanding the economics of childcare. Show me the money, honey. The childcare industry in the U.S. produced revenue totaling $47.2 billion and generated an additional $52.1 billion in spillover in other industries for a total economic impact of $99.3 billion, according to the Committee for Economic Development in 2019. However, incomes received by workers in the industry are low. Without childcare, we understand that the American workforce would look very different. Families would have to either struggle to find available family members to provide care, or we would have to go back to primarily single income families. According to the U.S. Department of Education in 2016, with an average pay of just under $11 an hour, preschool teachers are paid less on average than mail order clerks, tree trimmers, and pest control workers. In fact, most early childhood educators earn so little that they qualify for public programs, including for the very programs they teach targeted at low-income families. According to the U.S. Education Secretary John B. King Jr., undervaluing the nation's early childhood educators flies in the face of what we know about brain development and the ultimate time for learning. Educating children before kindergarten requires significant knowledge, expertise, and skill. In 2016, Cashin, Potter, and Stetner summed this all up by posting the additional question of, at a time when children are most dependent and vulnerable, why are their caretakers and educators compensated so little, almost guaranteeing a workforce marked by high turnover and instability. Last October, I'd hit a point in my corporate childcare job that I knew I just couldn't do it anymore. The amount of work involved, but not knowing if I was going to pay my regular bills, never mind my college loan, drove me to start looking for a job change. One that I genuinely considered was at our local Hobby Lobby. At the time, they were advertising for a full-time position with benefits with a starting wage that was 70 cents more an hour than what I was making after 3 years as a certified lead teacher and health and safety coordinator at a corporate child care center. Torrance acknowledged that we must be sensitive to problems and then look to find solutions. The solutions that I've presented are to raise wages and allow for unionization. My personal theory on creativity stresses that it will not just happen on its own. A billion-dollar industry is not just going to decide that it should lower its profit margin to pay their staff more. It has to come from pressure from both inside and outside. The problem today is that turnover rates in childcare are high because staff are so underpaid. Some sobering data from Cashin, Potter, and Stettin. At least 50% of the teaching staff indicated that they were worried about their family's economic well-being on 5 out of 6 economic security items. Nearly 3/4 of teaching staff expressed worry about having enough money to pay monthly bills. 7 in 10 teaching staff worried about paying for routine health care costs for themselves or for their family members. More than 1/2 of teaching staff expressed worry about paying for their housing costs and transportation costs to get to work. We cannot have a quality system when the core people in the system, those teachers, are constantly worried about how they are going to make their ends meet. Whitebrook, Phillips, and Howe stated that the U.S. approach is poorly coordinated and leaves the majority of families struggling to afford care, and the ECE workforce economically insecure. This quote sums up why wages need to be raised, but also brings up the concern about the cost of childcare already. What can be seen regardless is that by paying childcare staff a living wage, they are less likely to leave. For people who are getting college degrees, it is understandable when they expect their wage to offset the cost of their education. In a study done in Pennsylvania, these were the following findings. More than 3/4 of teachers say, absent the union, their working conditions and salaries would suffer. A majority of teachers also agree that without the union, they would be more vulnerable to school politics and would have nowhere to turn in the face of unfair charges by students and parents. 71% of teachers gave an excellent or good rating to their union. Union teachers were found to be more enthusiastic about teaching and less likely to leave for better paying jobs. If the teachers' union can do this for them, then it stands to reason that it could do the same for childcare staff. Childcare staff, especially lead teachers, have to have hours of experience and bachelor's degrees in early childhood education to be certified in childcare. However, the difference in teaching 4-year-olds instead of 5-year-olds could cost an individual thousands of dollars a year, plus health care and the benefit of collective bargaining. This simply isn't right. Despite stricter rules and harder staff education requirements, childcare staff continue to be viewed as less than teachers and compensated according to that view. It is time to develop a growth mindset in childcare. Earlier, I mentioned that raising wages would in turn affect already high childcare rates. Whitewood, Phillips, and Howes pointed out that the U.S. system is poorly coordinated. This is where the growth is needed. Denmark has pioneered a new way of handling childcare. The average wage for childcare staff in Copenhagen is just over $30,000 in U.S. currency a year. Using the previously mentioned data from the U.S. Department of Education, it means that the average in Copenhagen is $9,200 more a year than the average in U.S. Because Denmark's childcare system operates like a public education system, parents are only paying roughly 30% of the full childcare cost. In other words, teachers are paid more and families are paying less. This system is costing the taxpayers collectively more money, but it is providing stability to families and teachers, which is a huge demographic overall. The United States could not hope to implement this type of system overnight. However, that brings us right back to my personal theory of creativity, that this will not happen randomly, and large changes must be backed by individuals and society as a whole. If the U.S. is to change the nature of our ECE system, then we have to develop a growth mindset. We have to understand that we could live in a nation where teachers aren't worried about how they're going to pay rent and their school loans, but families also aren't worried about how they're going to pay that $400+ weekly childcare bill. I mentioned a year ago that I couldn't do it anymore. I did leave my corporate job and my health and safety title to be a lead infant teacher at a small nonprofit. I make more money now than at any other center I've worked at, and the center is my fourth. They provide free health care, free training to cover my state-mandated yearly training hours, and I get a minimum of 1 hour of prep time a week. I'm happy. Those 3 words spill over into my classroom, making it bright, inviting, and loving. Because my needs as an employee are being met, I can meet the physical, emotional, and social needs of the children in my care without feeling stressed. This only happened because someone had a growth mindset and decided that they could do childcare differently. Our tuition is still the lowest in the city, with our starting rate being $220 for an infant and decreasing from there. Childcare can be done differently and effectively, but only if we decide that it is worth supporting. This is a change that the multi-billion-dollar industry isn't going to make on their own without being pushed. Relating this back again to my personal theory on creativity, positive change won't happen without someone, and then a group of someones specifically pushing for it. As I stated in my opening comments, innovation and creativity are needed in childcare because it cannot continue to require more of staff without compensating them appropriately for their efforts. Not only that, but this is a field that employs a huge margin of minorities, both in gender and in ethnicity. In the fight for equality, this fact cannot be overlooked. Failing to recognize this, for the problem that it is, will continue to cultivate high staff turnover rates and inferior childcare. Creativity and innovation have been at the forefront of the education and child care system for years. Philosophers and scientists have both met in this field, trying to perfect a system that will nourish the needs of the children physically, mentally, and socially. Teachers, because that is what child care educators are teachers, on a daily basis are seeking to find better solutions for issues in their classrooms and problems facing their children based upon the theories of philosophers and the scientific theories of brain development. What American society absolutely must do is help those teachers to make changes that are creative and innovative to help them feel financially stable and supported. Making a national change towards economic stability for childcare staff is just the start. Enabling them to unionize would give them a level of support and power that has never been seen before in our country for people like them. And lastly, developing a growth mindset that allows for national change in how we structure and financially support childcare would give both families and teachers the help that they need to be successful. Thank you. There was a lot of data in this presentation, and that is reflected in the references. I have a lot of government sources for the economic and child care staff statistics. I also have information from the KinderCare website, as theirs was the first corporate child care company. I also have a few quotes from books and journal entries. I try to keep the references diverse in nature to get a large variety of information. Some of it comes from universities, some of it is our textbook, a lot of it's from the Ashford Library, and it all came together to create a lot of information that was able to be put into this presentation.